Hey, what's good, Jazz fans? Welcome to Jabber Jazz, your home for Utah Jazz basketball content. So I'm your host, Adam Bushman, at Adam_Bushman on Twitter. Today we're having an awesome special edition of the Jabber Jazz podcast, the definitive review of the rebrand. And here to do it with me, we have Tiffanee, who has some of the strongest rebrand takes, though maybe not as hot as her Rudy Gobert takes. Tiffanee, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Adam. Happy to be here and happy to talk rebrand.
Absolutely. And also we've got JazzUniTracker. Sam is here. Fan, designer, consultant for the actual rebrand. He's here to talk to us. We're so excited to have you, Sam. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam and Tiffanee. Nice to meet you guys. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of the ghost following everybody, kind of seeing everybody from afar. So it's cool to see you guys in person.
Yeah, it's so great to connect. And I wanted these two on the podcast specifically because we were going to dive into the rebrand. Specifically, now that we've seen it all, we've got everything, we've got all the context now. Let's look back from the very beginning, actually decide what's good, what's bad. Did the team actually use good practice, good process throughout this whole rebrand? What's the legacy and how we might like to see it evolve? We're going to get into all that and more. If you haven't yet and you like what we're doing, consider subscribing, following, leaving us a review or a comment, and snagging some merch on our store. That always helps as well. Okay, so let's get into what's actually good and bad. And I do really want to kind of go back to the very, very beginning because in the 2021-22 season, we saw a redesigned stadium with black and white everywhere. What's going on? Unofficial graphics. We saw Fontgate. Holy cow, was that just wild. All these crazy fonts and the marketing team eventually doing just the Dwight Schrute happy birthday period type things for all the players and stuff. Black and white. Talk to me, was this a good lead up, actually doing the podcast or doing the rebrand in kind of a half step, like almost leading up 2 seasons worth of rebrand in a way? Start with you, Tiffanee. Are you up or down on that approach to the rebrand, kind of this lead up?
Yeah, I would say yes. I feel like it was a good idea. I do remember going to games last year and noticing certain things within the arena. I did notice a lot more, black and white. I noticed some subtle hint with the yellow here and there. And I saw the yellow and I thought, okay, I don't know. Is that going to be part of the rebrand? I'm not sure. Is it just, are they just leaning kind of into the yellow, right? That, they had the statement jersey and everything. So I wasn't quite sure. Thought maybe it could be a possibility, but I thought, I'm going to reserve my judgment for, the full reveal, if you want to say that. So, but I did like the idea of sort of leaning in, like you were saying, to the rebrand. I think I don't know that it would have been a great idea to just boom, hit us with the rebrand right off the bat. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. There might be other people who think otherwise. Personally, yeah. I liked the lead-in.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? I mean, you as being a consultant and things for the rebrand, you were kind of introduced, midway through. Maybe I'll just kind of share some of my thoughts, really quick. But I hated most of the lead-up, I think. And probably mostly to do with, I don't know, I guess the taboo nature of the topic. It felt like some of the Jazz beat writers started asking about it, and it was kind of like uncouth, hard to talk about until ultimately at that Silicon Slopes event that Ryan Smith and Dwayne Wade were at. They're like, oh yeah, we're rebranding. Oh yeah, none of the colors make sense. Wade's mom was totally confused. And it wasn't until then that it was just like, okay, yeah, they're clearly, publicly sharing that, hey, yeah, we are doing a rebrand. So it's just I thought that the lead up was weird because of how taboo it kind of was to talk about. But Sam, you have a unique perspective kind of coming in midway to this whole thing. What are your thoughts? Are you up or down on the lead up and how the Jazz kind of did this half measure for a rebrand?
Coming from a team perspective and like a marketing perspective, I think what they were trying to do is kind of do a half cast, right? They wanted to kind of feel out how the fan base would react to something like that. And so I think they started to kind of build maybe a foundation of letting fans know, hey, there's changes coming. So when it does happen, don't revolt on us. Don't completely abandon us. We're doing some big things here, which we think are big things. So hang with us here. There's some big things coming. So I'm up for that. I think it would have been a better path than just surprising the fan base with, bam, we're black, white, and yellow, like, highlighter yellow to take it even further. So I'm okay with that.
So speaking of highlighter yellow, okay, the next component I want to touch on here are the colors, okay? So it was originally proposed black and white, yellow hints, and then it kind of became formal that the Jazz were going to proceed with yellow. And it was really a concession that was mandated by the league because the league is like, oh, we already have San Antonio, we already have Brooklyn. Can't really have you guys do solely black and white. You're going to need to, throw in, a third color there. So what are your guys' thoughts? Are you up or down on the colors? Like maybe speak to, initial reaction, but then, after, I don't know, being force-fed black, white, and yellow for the past few months, how have you come around? Tiffanee, what do you think?
Well, I think my opinion on the yellow is well documented.
For those not plugged into Twitter, please give us just a preview.
It's not my thing. Highlighter yellow, it's not something that I ever foresaw coming. I don't know that it has really anything to do with the Jazz as a whole. I know that they mentioned the black. I don't remember who it was from. I saw some mention about, the black, white, and the yellow. It's the black and the white represents the keyboards on the piano, and the represents the spotlight on the stage. And I was like, I've never seen a spotlight that's highlighter yellow. Like, to me, it didn't resonate with me. But yeah, I get that. I get that, the league was saying, hey guys, that's great that you want to go black and white. You're going to have to add something else. I don't know what they could have added other than the highlighter yellow, but I definitely am not a highlighter yellow fan. We'll put it that way.
Well, it's so interesting. I'm really glad you brought that up because I was going to touch on it too, that kind of buried deep into this rebrand press release is this paragraph that talks about the symbolism of the colors and why they chose it and why it really aligns with, this term jazz. And I'm like, why did you bury that lead? I think so many more people probably would have been like, oh, okay, I guess I get it now. But it totally felt like they just buried that deep within a press release and everybody's just like, yellow? What the fetch? Where did this even come from? Sam, talk to me about, your thoughts on the colors, the press release, a natural alternative, though there are still complications with the other teams in the league, with using a purple or something like that. But talk to me about colors. Are you up or down?
Yeah, I think in a vacuum, black, white, and yellow, they actually go really well together. You go look if you're if you follow any other sports, you look at like the city of Pittsburgh, right? You have the Steelers. I think all their teams actually are black, white, and yellow. That's the color palette that they've kind of really leaned into with all their sports, between them, the Penguins, I think the Pirates as well. So they work, by themselves. Now, that being said, I didn't ever see any connection to Utah Jazz. As a fan, I've followed them since I was a kid, and even going back into New Orleans, they've always had, this purple color scheme. And we got into the navy, of course, and I'm sure we'll get into all that if you want to. But, and I think most people that follow me know my story. I was a pretty fortunate fan, and I had the opportunity to see the rebrand a year plus before they rolled it out. And so when they showed me and they pulled the curtain down off these posters and showed what the colors were going to be in the jerseys, I was pretty stunned. And so I just didn't feel like it was Jazz at all.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were just barely seeing, the font gate, like you mentioned, and the black and white around the arena. So I knew that something was coming, but I didn't realize it was going to be a spotlight yellow, or like our fans are calling it highlighter yellow. I don't know.
Yeah. Me personally, I've come around on the colors. I feel like half my wardrobe is black and white. I love black and white. It's crisp, it's clean. The yellow was weird initially. That was hard for me to grasp. But then, aesthetically, like you're talking, Sam, they work. It is not Utah Jazz by any means. But I've definitely come around on black, white, and yellow. The implementation of it, as we'll talk here in a little bit, leaves quite a bit to be desired. But as far as colors go, I've actually come around on them. I would, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but, I think there's some things you could do with that yellow to make it less abrupt. It might be a nice way to say it.
And if I could add one more thing, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
On this topic, I think the Jazz wanted, and I think coming from Ryan especially, and I've mentioned this before, he's kind of an innovator. He's a pioneer in his own realm and in his world. And so following someone else's path of, hey, we're going to just go back to being purple because that's how the Millers did it, and the owners before that, that's not really his style. And I think he probably took a 30,000-foot view of it, like, hey, what's a color palette that nobody else in the league has? What's something that's unique and different? Because we're trying to be unique and different here in Utah. And that's his style. And I think it totally resonates with this complete rebrand, that it's kind of followed Ryan's desire to be, cutting edge.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought up purple, because when the colors were kind of released, and maybe even like the lead up, we started seeing all of those mock-ups, all of those inklings of what the colors and the jerseys were kind of going to look like. Fan base really started to kind of make their opinions well known. And then all of a sudden the release video happens, and what do you see? Not black, not white, not yellow, but purple. In fact, 60 seconds of the release video, 68 seconds, I went back and timed it, 68 seconds is purple, all about purple. 33 seconds is devoted to the new kit, the new rebrand, 3 jerseys crammed into 33 seconds. And it was just this weird unveil of purple is back, and then kind of like, I don't know, the rebrand, everything we're going to wear most nights is secondary. Tiffanee, how did that come across? Just, hey, purple's back, but is it?
Yeah, I kind of have the same thoughts as you were. I'm watching the video and I'm thinking, okay, but when are we seeing the actual rebrand? Now, I love purple, so I was enjoying the first 68 seconds, like you're saying. I'm like, oh, look at this. We're bringing back the mountain jersey, and ooh, look at this other purple jersey that we're going to have as well. And then, boom, here comes the last 30 seconds of the black, the white, and the yellow. And I'm like, you start off with the purple. Everyone loves the purple, and then you kind of tag the other the rebrand on the back end. And I can see why they led with the purple, because it got me excited. The 30 seconds at the end didn't quite do it for me, but I love the video. I love that JC was the model. He's, great vibes all around. Everybody loves JC, so great choice on player, to use for that video. I liked the music. I liked, the way the video was done. But yeah, I thought it was very strange that it was purple. Purple is back. Oh, by the way, here's black, white, and yellow. And then, video ended. And I think a lot of people were kind of taken aback by that. Just at how much time was spent talking about the purple versus the rebrand.
Yeah, Sam, weigh in here as well. Just like, how did it come across, not only from a marketing perspective, but, just as a fan, and then, having seen, a lot of the rebrand materials a year ago, but then all of a sudden, most of the content is centered around purple. Give me your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I had waited for that day for a long time because that's when I finally could kind of divulge what I had seen and what I was kind of holding on to for months.
It must have been so hard for you, man. Holy cow.
Oh my goodness. It was tough. And, I considered myself super lucky to even see it. So I'm not, saying that I was mad or anything, but, and I got to be careful here because I don't want to upset anybody, up there in Salt Lake. But my thought was that, purple, I don't think was part of it. And I think, unfortunately, the whole uniform package was leaked. And it was leaked a few months before the announcement. And I think the team saw the fans' reaction of the leaks and said, oh my goodness, we really need to do something, or else, we could really lose our fan base here. And I don't know if a team's ever done something like that where they just gone all in and changed everything. I mean, it could be dangerous, right? From a fan perspective and, money perspective as well. It's all about the bottom line. So I think that they were probably like, okay, we need to do something to reel in our fan base. And they all know that most of the fans, the vast majority, like purple, and the Purple Mountain uniforms were already accepted and approved by Nike because we used them 2 years prior. And so they were able to dig back through, the old bin of uniforms that we'd used in the past and just use it again. And I think it was a Band-Aid for a way to kind of bring in the rebrand without, letting the fan base down 100%. They still had that purple to fall back on as kind of their safety net. That was kind of my take on it. And I laughed because, I had kind of seen that coming. And when Ryan kind of tweeted out, purple's here to stay, there was lots of mixed messages going on. And if you're on Twitter, Jazz Twitter, people were like, well, I knew the rebrand was just a hoax. I knew that black, white, and yellow was just a hoax. Oh, we're going all back into purple. And then the announcement happened, and we kind of got both worlds. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. I thought the Salt Lake Tribune actually put it pretty well. Andy Larson said that the Jazz rebranded the rebrand. They reported that it was kind of like this last minute, last ditch effort to kind of save face with the franchise, but still do everything that they had worked on and planned to do, and then hope that the two will really, carry the Jazz and the fan base through this not only awkward time with rebrand, but also reshuffling of the roster, new coaching staff. That's not our focus here, but really interesting, just how much they had to lean on purple to kind of keep everything together.
Yeah, and it's a really fascinating thing. If I could add one more thing, sorry. Really fascinating.
Yes, please do.
Because we go from, making the playoffs, thinking we're going to be, a contender. Obviously, we lost to the Mavericks. And within a few weeks, the rebrand fell right during that weird time where we lost Quinn Snyder. We were probably going to trade our two biggest stars and maybe everybody else.
Yeah.
We had Danny Ainge now running the show. And so we went from having this identity of kind of who we were to 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, we didn't recognize our own franchise. And that was kind of a scary time for a fan and kind of a volatile time for a fan without being too dramatic, but it was crazy.
Yeah, 100% crazy. Tiffanee, you have any thoughts there? I think that is a great point, and I definitely felt it. What did you feel at that point with so much change?
I think Sam brought up a great point. I do feel like that was a very interesting time as a Jazz fan. A lot was in flux, and then this happens as well. And to Sam's point, you don't recognize the team because coaching changes, players are getting traded. I'm not quite sure. I don't know when they could have, if they could go back, would they change things? Probably, maybe, who knows? I'm not sure if that was necessarily the best time to drop a rebrand as well. But, it is what it is. It came down when it came down. And I agree. I think the addition of the purple kind of as a Band-Aid, it makes me wonder. I mean, I know that I was vocal about it, but it makes me wonder, like, just how bad was the backlash, for them to say, okay, hold up, like we got a big problem on our hands.
Seriously,
like go all in on purple because backlash is severe.
Yeah, 100%. So another component, interestingly, not only to the purple, but then also the new kit, are these matching courts. And we'd kind of seen the purple court with the Jazz Mountain logo, previously. We had one of those courts a couple years back when the Jazz had the Mountain uniforms. So not a ton there, but super, super aesthetically pleasing and just ties so many eras and generations of the Jazz fan base together. But then you got this new court that complements the new kit, the new rebrand. So we've got this angled, light colored flooring, these silver accents, black and yellow paintwork. We've seen it on TV. Maybe you guys have seen it in the arena as well. Are you guys up or down on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I went to a game right off the bat at the beginning of the season. They had the new black, white, and yellow court. I was surprised. I showed up. I sat in my seat. I looked at the court and I said, "That looks nice." I really don't have anything negative to say about the court itself. I think, from my perspective, I only wish that the jerseys complemented the courts and vice versa better. I feel like the court, the court looks very clean. The court looks, I don't know if this makes sense. It's not minimal and it's not too cluttered. I feel like it's a good balance of the two, where I feel like the jerseys are they're too plain. They don't quite match up with the court as well. And then, the purple court with the mountain logo. I mean, everybody loves that court. I don't think anybody they hate that court. But I remember too, they showed the courts, with the rebrand announcement. And I remember seeing the courts in the video and thinking, those are going to be so cool. When we see them live, when we see them on TV. So I was really excited for the courts, not as excited for the jerseys, at least the rebrand jerseys. But I like the courts a lot.
Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Tiffanee here. I think they really redeemed themselves as much as they could with the two courts. And if you notice, the mountain court is actually a little bit different than the one they had 2 years before. They made the key solid purple, and they actually kind of tied in some
move, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, they made some beautiful decisions. As far as the black and white court, same thing. I felt like there was some good design aspects to it. It wasn't too minimalistic, but it was clean. And there's some, if you're a jersey uniform aesthetics nerd like me, you'll notice different things. Like the wood paneling is 66 degrees, the same degree as the Jazz note, and little things like that, subtle design, Easter eggs or whatever you want to call them is such a cool way to kind of put your brand and infuse your brand into the court. And with, if you look above, if you took a bird's eye view of the court, you'd even see a note underneath the court. It's like they laid a note and then they put the court on top of it. And you can look up by the benches and then down in the other corner and see that there's into the ball and then the top part of the note. So little things like that. And like Tiffanee said, I wish they would have put some of those subtle design, I don't know, Easter eggs or whatever you want to call them, just elements into the jerseys themselves, because then I think it could have tied everything in beautifully. And that's when I think fans could have gotten behind it, when they see it all tie together, when they go to the arena, they have that fan experience and it all ties together. Would have been beautiful.
Yeah. I really, really like the court as well. What I think is that they achieved the minimalistic, trend. That's where things are going. That's what's in. They achieved that, but they were still able to have a lot of character in the court, and I think that the angled court work and stuff like that, nobody else has done that in the league, and that adds an element of character. And preview my thought about the jerseys is they achieved minimalism, but they lacked character, and we'll get into that in a second. Another part of this rebrand is that, we've got a slightly different logo, right? It doesn't have that accent mark at the end. They angled things a bit, made that note stem a bit thicker. They cited, being a little more identifiable, easier for digital use. Any burning thoughts on the note change? I was more than fine with everything they did there.
I would agree with you, Adam. I think the note is, again, clean, minimalistic, but doesn't look like clip art. you know what I'm saying? Like it's got a little bit more to it than just a note, right, with a basketball on it. So I don't have many thoughts on the note. I like it. I think it's clean. I just wish that Worldwide Wob would actually use our current logo.
Oh my gosh!
That's one thing.
Or anyone else for that matter. Yeah.
Goodness.
It's the logo that he's been using has been, the old logo that we last used in 2016, and I'm like, come on, Wob, you can do better than this.
Yeah. And he's not the only one either. I mean, you even look at like ESPN. I mean, it's ESPN. They should at least find a way to use an updated logo. And I'm with you guys. I think the note, bolded a little bit, changing the stem a little bit thicker, taking off the accent. It made it so much more of an identifiable symbol. And I think that was a win as far as marketing and branding is concerned, for sure.
So we talked a little bit about FontGate earlier. During this half step with the rebrand, this kind of lead up, they experimented with like these Atari, like 60s gaming fonts, and then they experimented with, just like your standard, bold-faced fonts and things, and tons of backlash from the fan base. Ultimately, what they've kind of settled on is a lot of block, capitalized letters. They do kind of have their own script to them, so, it's not just something off the shelf. But we have, I don't know if you guys have seen this, we have started seeing these, like, weird mismatched sizes where, like, they'll have, like, a really wide M and then everything else is, like, super thin. I don't know, still some, like, really interesting, weird stuff there. Any burning thoughts font-wise?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Blast from the Past fonts, and sometimes Blast from the Past can work in a good way, but I don't think this was it. The weird kind of digital type look. To me, it was hard to read. It's like way too old school, and I get that like other teams they'll use script that could be considered old school, right? But I just don't think digital is the way to go. I was very against that. and to your point too, with some of the things they're testing right now, I've noticed the same as you. You got one big letter and then one skinny letter, and then and I've noticed too they slant some letters, they don't slant other letters. I saw that just a few days ago, and I'm like, I don't know what way my eyes are supposed to be. I feel like with design, you're kind of taught like, okay, the eye goes, this is the way the eye goes, right? And it's like this mess. I feel like I've got one eye going this way, one eye going this way. It's an interesting choice by them. Maybe they're testing, some stuff with that right now. It just seems like there's a lot of testing happening right now.
I kind of have an interesting perspective on this, and maybe it's a little bit different. I feel like we're talking about two different groups here, okay, within the Jazz organization. There's definitely the digital social media department that does a lot of the video content that we see online on the website. And then you have the actual design group that does the uniforms and the branding. And I think what we might be seeing, and this is just me guessing here, but I think those two groups, they're separate, and they're different. And so what you're having is maybe in the social media side of the design team or the social team is that's their creativity coming out, and that's their design, choices that they decided to do these different fonts, the Atari old old school font that way, or, you know, this weird slanted big letter, small letter thing. I think that's more of just a social trend of trying to be cool and artistic. And I don't think it reflects as much on the brand design team that does the uniforms and the, you know, the branding as it pertains to the organization. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but
I feel that.
I feel that come through. Yeah. So, you know, and as far as like the fonts go on uniforms, it is a unique font. You know, you won't find it anywhere. It is very blocky, very plain. And it could look good. I just think, going back to, like we said, a few more design elements, they could have used that font if they would have added other design elements to, you know, kind of blend with it. I also think that it's just way too big for the uniforms as the uniforms go. I mean, if the number is down to where you're tucking in the jersey, it's too big. And that's my humble opinion, but that's kind of where I stand on it.
Well, with that fantastic segue, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this rebrand, the jerseys. Okay. Tiffanee, should we just let you go off for a little while and we can just let you roll with it? There's so much that can be said here, and I would just love for you to go into all your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like I'm almost tired. I'm all.
Well, we caught you at the perfect time. Right after this, you can be done.
I feel like I'm glad we're doing this episode because there is so much to talk about the rebrand, including the jerseys. But, you know, Sam and I were chatting actually before we started this podcast, and they were saying, man, there's a lot of people out there who are just done with talking about the rebrand. And anytime you bring it up, you know, you got people I don't care. No, I don't think they're at fault. They have an opinion just like we do, but there are people out there like, enough with the rebrand. Let's stop talking about it. Let's move on. But I think there's going to be talk about it for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I mean, the jerseys, like Sam said, font is way too big. Numbers are way too big. It's like abnormally large to me, you know. I feel like I could, from the very top row in the upper bowl, I could still see, you know, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it's almost, yeah, it's just too big. As far as you know, the colors go, I've come around a little bit on the black. I think the black is my favorite out of the three, you know, excluding the purple jersey, obviously. The yellow is just too much. It's abrupt. It's in your face. It's bright. The white. Now, I do like the white only because there is actually a Jazz logo on the white jersey, which is nice. You don't have just Utah or Jazz with large numbers. You actually have a Jazz note on there. So to me, that makes the white a good jersey. However, I'm still not a big fan of the yellow trim with the white. I don't know. It doesn't look great to me. But I mean, I've got so many opinions on the jerseys, but that's kind of the overview.
Well, that's fantastic. Sam, you prefaced a little bit of your thoughts on the jerseys, but you know, this is the right time to go into a little bit more detail as you are begging for a little bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you have to look at maybe what their purpose was behind this. And I think, like I said, they wanted to be unique. They wanted to be different. And so the font size, I think that was the first thing, is how can we be big and stand out? I mean, you look at like Oregon sports, especially Oregon football, and the way that they are kind of big and bold and loud. And that's definitely a design trend that they've, you know, leaned into heavily. I think there's some merit to that, where, you know, that's kind of where the Jazz were coming from as well, is we're going to be different. And I'll just kind of start from the top. I mean, the association jersey with the note, I love that note design with the number underneath. We've seen it in previous jerseys. It works great. I mean, it just flows really perfectly. It's a great, maybe a secondary jersey, in my opinion. And if you look across the league, you won't find other teams that are using that kind of secondary logo or a jersey without maybe their name or their city or state on the front of it. And so that's another way that the Jazz said, hey, you know what? We're just going to be different. Whereas association, which that's the white one, that's what Nike calls the white jerseys. And then the icon, that's the colored jersey that the teams wear. Usually those have the team name or city or state. And so for the Jazz to say, you know what, we're not playing by your rules, Nike, we're going to do something totally different. It just kind of leans in a little bit more to their whole perspective with this rebrand. But the yellow jersey, which is the icon, we've seen it once. And I think if anybody follows me, they can go see how many times we're going to wear it. I think it's 10 all year. So we only got 9 more times with it. It's very bright. It's, and it lacks a lot of design. And I think, Tiffanee, if I remember right, you had some sort of retweet thing going on that if you got enough retweets, you'd be wearing a yellow sweatsuit. Did that ever come to fruition? Because I expected to see that on this podcast. It was like a banana yellow, well, obviously highlighter yellow top and bottom.
Well, that's amazing.
So,
yeah, it was.
Is that going to happen? Yeah.
I did. I asked for a certain number of retweets. I think it was about like a week after it still hadn't hit the retweet threshold that I set up. So at that point I cut it off and I was like, well, if it's not going to hit that by a week, then, but who knows? I should have bought that outfit and worn it when I went to the game on Halloween and just, gone as highlighter Jazz fan,
Yeah.
I'm not. We'll see. I may still wear it, but something like spectacular would have to happen for me to actually show up to Vivint head to toe highlighter.
Well, we can bring out that retweet if we have to get a few more, if we need to get you over the threshold. But I just thought that was really funny because it is it's a comical color scheme just to have all bright yellow, and everyone's talking about the construction worker comments and things like that. It just didn't work for me. And then the fact that the team's using this kind of grayish blue trim on the sides, which was another color that they brought in, really didn't have a place. That was something I found interesting. I'm with Tiffanee. I like the black statement uniform. It's clean. If you size down the number and the font, I think you have something better there. But I just want to see some more design. I just want to see some pattern, some color on the sleeves and the collar, whereas the team just decided we're not going to do that. We're just going to go all black or all yellow. And then on the association, it's that yellow. And I don't think that the yellow and the white contrast each other very good, so it kind of gets lost there. And to me, this is just basic design principles that they're purposefully breaking the rules. It's not that they don't have the talent, right? I know the team that has created the jerseys in the past, Ben Barnes, if you know him and know his stuff, he's extremely talented and amazing at what he does. So it wasn't for the lack of talent and ability to make these choices. I think they actively wanted to shake up things with their choices. And so, they definitely did that. And like I said, I would have loved to see a little bit more design go into these uniforms. And if you follow me long enough, you'll see that I try to mock up my own designs and say, hey, what I would have done, or how can we fix this? But, all in all, I think they achieved what they tried to do with shaking up the entire league, not just Utah Jazz fans, because they are the butt of a lot of jokes league wide. Tiffanee mentioned WOB and some of the other outlets. If they're talking about Utah Jazz uniforms, I think that might be a problem. But hey, we're here, so.
One thing to add to that too, if I may, that's part of Jazz Twitter that I absolutely love, is everyone who's putting together mock-ups of jerseys. I remember, before the rebrand actually came out, there were a lot of accounts on Twitter that were putting out amazing mock-ups. I mean, yeah, there were some things I wasn't a big fan of, but there were some others where I thought, man, if they could come out with this, like, people would buy this. This would fly off the shelves, right? So yeah, it's sort of disappointing from a fan perspective when you see amazing mock-ups done by fans, and then the actual product, like you said, Sam, is not quite as detailed as you would like. There's not as much personality, right? It's I feel like the font and the numbers just overwhelm the jersey, with the black and the yellow. So, but I just want to put a shout out too for all of those people who put together those mock-ups, because I mean there were some really great ones out there.
Yeah, I totally second that. Really, really awesome mock-ups, and it's just awesome to have a community that's supportive of good ideas, whether they be mock-ups, stats, or memes, or the opponent Reddit game threads. All that kind of stuff is just awesome, and it lends itself to why Jazz Twitter is so amazing. Also, kind of back to Sam's point about how much flack that the organization has got. It's not just locally. I mean, when Zach Lowe, kind of like the NBA writer for ESPN, sits down and allocates several paragraphs in one of his, I think it might have been a 10 Things column, specifically just blasting the Jazz rebrand and just how awful from his perspective, the jerseys looked. That kind of encapsulated and, it was kind of like the public face of, national media, other fan bases, their poor outlook on what the Jazz did. I'll summarize just briefly my thoughts, I guess. I think the majority of the issue I have with the jerseys isn't the colors, isn't the minimalism. Ultimately, it's just the lack of character. There's nothing in there. I think you achieved the character with that association version where you've got the Jazz note and you've got the numbers underneath. I always find it just bizarre that we've always relegated that awesome design to some of the least liked jerseys that the Jazz have had, like that gold mustard yellow. That was the color we chose for that awesome design. Then we had like those Christmas jerseys that were like Sprite green. If you remember those, we had that design on those. So just odd that we've had that awesome of a design on some of the, lesser popular ones. And so, that type of character I was just missing from the jerseys. I agree on the font sizes. Sam, I love that you pointed out that, like, hey, Jazz are intentionally breaking some of the long-standing design, rules or best practices intentionally. Like, this is, their whole motivation behind it. Still, and I've seen some people say, oh, well, the NFL has, big jersey numbers. And I keep thinking, oh, you know how much bigger their field is? How much bigger their stadiums are? Like, that doesn't fly with me. And I really like the black. I really like the black and yellow. The yellow, solid. I'm really waiting to see how that looks at home. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I don't think we see that yellow at home until we play the Magic. And we've only seen it once. So jury for me is still out a little bit on that one. And you guys mentioned with the white, the association, how, the yellow trim gets lost with the white. On the sides, we also see some of that like bluish gray, that light bluish gray. That's technically a part of some branding elements the Jazz have used, specifically with the All-Star Game stuff. That gets lost too. So it just feels almost like a plain white jersey with, I don't know, some stuff that gets lost. Anyways, I think there are plenty of tweaks to make there, but, they did what they did, and we're all coming to grips with it in our own way. Did I spur any last thoughts about the jerseys from you guys?
I think
where would this content? Oh.
Nope, you go first, Sam.
Go ahead, Tiffanee. I'll be quick. I just said, I'm a Twitter account that focuses strictly on Jazz uniforms. So, I mean, I get some of my best content out of this kind of stuff. If we just had amazing jerseys all the time, what would I have to tweet about and kind of talk to people about? So, hey, it's a lot of great content for me.
So the last component kind of also kind of tethered to the jerseys is the merchandise. you don't spring for a jersey, but you might spring for, a hat, or a sweater, or etc. What are you guys' thoughts on some of the merchandise? I won't lead you guys on any more than that.
Well, I'm sporting a all black sweater right now. I don't know if you can really see it. There's a faint jazz note on it.
It's nice. Yeah. It's clean.
To Sam's point earlier, I love black and white. Ever since I was little, I love. It's sometimes been hard for me to wear louder colors. I usually stick to like my good neutrals. So white and black for me is easy. Goes with everything. Very clean, right? I don't know if I'm going to buy anything that's strictly highlighter yellow, to Sam's point with my tweets with my head to toe outfit, but we'll see if I can be coerced into buying maybe something black like this that has a yellow jazz note on it, or Utah Jazz in yellow. I think my biggest pet peeve, and this could be a whole other podcast, I think. My biggest pet peeve with merchandise, coming from a woman's perspective, is I feel like there's always been a lot of great men's merchandise that I've seen. I've been like, man, if they had this in a women's size, I would buy this right now. There's some good women's merchandise out there too, but a lot of the times I feel like it's not as exciting, I guess, if I could say, as the men's merchandise. There's a lot of crop tops. What if you're a person who doesn't want to wear a crop top? What if, there's a lot of Lululemon stuff. I don't know how many people want to spend, do people want to spend that kind of money on the merchandise? Don't know. Like I said, this is something that's probably best kept for a different podcast, but that's definitely one thing that I've thought of. I've had conversations with other female jazz fans about just female apparel in general. But as far as merchandise goes right now, I'm probably sticking with black and white. I don't know that I'll be buying a jersey anytime soon. Partly for the colors, partly for who knows who's going to be here, kind of we're in that area where, do you buy certain jerseys or not? Do you know if players are going to be here past trade deadline? Who knows, right? I think there's still a lot of possibilities for this team. So I'm sticking with what I'm wearing, like sweaters, hats, basic kind of merchandise for now until we have a better idea of who's sticking around for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, thoughts on merchandise?
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts. And I think that if Ryan Smith were on this podcast right now, he would be clapping at Tiffanee's last comment that she made about how she's going to be wearing hoodies and hats and other items of merchandise, because that was one of his big intentions with this rebrand. Is I want to make a brand that fans are excited and positive, willing to wear outside of the arena. In fact, and I'm not trying to flex here, but like I said, I've been lucky enough to have some conversations with Ryan, and one of the conversations, it was at a playoff game, and I had on my yellow playoff shirt that they gave to every fan in the arena, right? And we were underneath and downstairs, and he said, I just don't think fans want to wear jerseys all the time. And he said, how about you? Are you wearing a jersey right now? And I actually was wearing a jersey underneath my shirt, but he said, you know what? I think most fans want to wear hoodies. They want to wear sweaters, long sleeve shirts, t-shirts. That's going to be more of kind of the direction we want to go. We want to have a better selection for fans and colors that look good and that are aesthetically pleasing outside of the arena as well as in. And he mentioned that, most of the fans won't wear a purple hoodie outside of the arena. And I think maybe your diehard fans would, but to both of your points, you have a lot of black and white in your closet. I do as well. And I think that it looks good. It's clean. It's, it's trendy in a lot of ways. And so I think the team has done a pretty good job with the merchandise. I agree with Tiffanee that I think that there could be more of a selection, for women and for everyone else. And there's certain things that I see like coaches or team like players wear, or even Ryan. I think, dang, that should be in the team store. I think that would sell really well. So, but all in all, I'd give them a pretty good grade as far as it goes on the merchandise side of things.
So a couple of my thoughts. I think the one thing I don't really like about the merchandise is just how much merchandise can be devoid of the note and just block letters, especially the hats. I'm a big hat guy. I love hats. And I'm really, really drawn to the black, white hats, even with the yellow note logo, but the ones that are just Utah Jazz or just Utah or Jazz. I just can't do those. They're just, I don't know. They're just too minimalistic, just super big, office, Dwight doing the happy birthday, that just too much big energy there. But so I don't really like the overly yellow stuff. I am convinced though, if the Jazz care about this rebrand, they need to spring for Tiffanee's full yellow outfit. Like, if they really believe in this thing, that's what they got to do. A lot of the purple stuff is really nice. And, I am planning on getting, some merchandise for myself. But I am with Tiffanee. I'm not prepared to buy a jersey, honestly. And I really want to, because I totally come around on the colors. Honestly, I want to get myself a Walker Kessler jersey. I do, but I just can't. I can't pull the trigger, and it's tough.
I think I'm with you on that. Like, I think Kessler's awesome, and I personally believe he is going to be here for a while. But again, it goes back to the jerseys for me. Like, I don't think I can spend $120, or whatever on yellow and black and white. I can't do it. There's something within me that won't allow me to spend that money. So, I think there's a part within me that says, hey, let's wait and let's see if any tweaks are made in the future. Let's hold off on spending money.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am too. Sam, opinions on a jersey, getting one for yourself anytime soon?
Yeah, I would add too. I mean, we just had two of the most beloved players in Jazz history get, for lack of a better word, ripped away from us, And so, I mean, I know Tiffanee was a huge Rudy Gobert fan, and, I had two Rudy Gobert jerseys myself. I had two Donovan Mitchell jerseys because they were two players that I felt were going to be here for a long time, that we could build around. And obviously we did. We did some great things. And obviously every great thing has to come to an end. But just like you guys, I'm a little hesitant to go pick up a jersey until either there's a star that we can really feel like is going to be here for the long term, or maybe a uniform comes out that, hey, we just absolutely fall in love with. So I'm holding on to my dollars. And, if we could pull up the revenue side of the team store, I'm sure they're feeling that exact same thing. I don't think jersey sales are that high right now. That's just a personal take. I don't have any data to back that up, but I think that's probably true.
I would be really curious too to know if they were pulling up sales just in general, how much purple is being sold over yellow, black, and white. I like when I've been at games and I've walked into the team store, I feel like I see a lot of purple. I'm seeing a lot of purple being picked up and taken to the register. I feel like when I've been walking around the concourse at Jazz games, I'm seeing purple, I'm seeing black, I'm seeing white. I'm not seeing as much of the yellow. So, yeah, I'm very curious about that. If like you're saying, if we have the opportunity to look at final numbers or just numbers that are showing up to today, what we would see.
So let's transition a little bit here, kind of looking back at the whole process. I want us to kind of evaluate the question of, did the Jazz execute, good process, good practice with this rebrand. So they came in wanting to fix an identity crisis, as they kind of put it. We mentioned, Dwayne Wade's mom said, "Hey, I hear you bought the Jazz. What colors are they?" And they kind of talked about not really knowing. We heard, reports coming out of, these focus groups that the Jazz had, that it was really just kind of like an echo chamber of really just wanting to hear, what they wanted to hear. And then, it just kind of being affirmative in a way, versus, coming with contrasting opinions and such. Lots of talk about this being Ryan's personal project and, his kind of mission to put his stamp on his, I guess, tenure as Jazz owner in this way, visually with the rebrand and, this, I guess, half step of, a bunch of the rebrand happening in last year and then fully executing it over this off season. We've got this, purple angle that was kind of thrown in last minute. We've got like this weird PR stuff throughout. And then recently, in a press conference with Ryan and Danny Ainge, Ryan started speaking on the record, admitting that there's stuff he didn't like and, things that he was kind of displeased with how things shook out. So now with all that kind of in the rearview mirror in a way, what do you guys think? And maybe we'll start with you, Sam. Did the Jazz use good practice? Did they go about this thing the right way?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because I think there's a lot of layers that go into this. And it's a little ironic that Ryan was part of a company and started a company that was all about, getting and collecting data to, to make correct decisions in business and to have those kind of, that kind of input from lots of different sources. And so, I can kind of confirm, a little bit of the focus groups, being that I was involved a little bit there. And I was pretty shocked what I heard from other people that were in the room. And here I am kind of standing back, looking at the rebrand with my hands on my head, like, oh man, what's going on here? What are we doing? But then I'm hearing a lot of affirmative type comments from other people, like, oh my gosh, this is the sickest jersey I've ever seen, right? Stuff like that's coming out. And so I'm sure that was probably part of, why they decided to do what they did. As it pertains to maybe, like you said, having it be Ryan's personal project, I mean, I kind of alluded to it before. I think Ryan is a visionary. He's a pioneer. He wants to be different. And when I was in that meeting, Ryan wasn't there, so I didn't have a chance to talk to him then at that point. But there was other leadership of the Jazz there, and I asked them straight up. I said, you looked at all these color combinations, you came up with this. Did you guys think of returning back to purple? And because that was kind of my MO going into it. I mean, I had done this identity project a couple months before where I had kind of combined purples from different eras, and I don't want to get too much into that and kind of talk about my own personal stuff. But I thought that when they pulled the sheets off the posters, it was going to be a purple comeback, full rebrand back to purple, and I was going to be so excited. Whether or not they used my designs or not, I was going to be excited because I love the purple. But I asked them, I said, did you guys think about doing purple? And they said, we never won anything in purple. We only took second. That was the closest we ever got. And so I think they kind of use that as maybe a mentality of, hey, we're going to be different. We're going to be something new, and let's go win it in this new color scheme. But like you said, the identity crisis of having so many colors that Dwayne Wade's mom doesn't even know. I don't know if they fixed that by adding more colors, but hey, it's what they did. We're here with it. There was some weird PR stuff, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. It was kind of really fascinating how it all fell to fruition, and kind of what we're left with now. And then I think they see that it's an evolution, that there's going to be changes that happen with the brand. And I think we'll see that going forward.
Tiffanee, what do you think? Good process, good practice from your vantage point. How do you evaluate how it all shook out?
Well, first off, I didn't know that was even a thing, Sam. I didn't know that you had, mentioned, hey, what about going back to purple? And then they said, well, we've never won anything in that. To me, that's kind of lame. I mean, just because you came in second wearing purple doesn't mean that purple is cursed. To me, that sounds like, okay, this particular color is cursed, we're never going to use it again. I don't agree with that. Purple is a color that we've worn when we've been at our best. So I don't know if I agree necessarily with that. That's an interesting tidbit. Yeah, that's interesting to know. But to your point, Adam, like to your question about did they use good practice? Did they fix my identity crisis? I don't think they did. I think it's even more confusing now, honestly. I know that there was a lot of talk about, and I think Ryan had put it out there, right? He had tweeted out that color palette, where it shows all the colors that the Jazz have used, and it is a lot, and it's too many. I've talked with Jazz fans before saying, I wish, hindsight is 2020, right? I wish that the Jazz had an identity like the Bulls, like the Celtics, like the Lakers, right? They've kept the same colors for years. They've deviated maybe slightly, but you know the Bulls, the Celtics, the Lakers. There's the logos have maybe changed here and there, but the colors have really never wavered. So in a way, I personally was hoping that they might go back to an older color scheme, if you want to say, but just so there is kind of that identity, because I think a lot of people do identify the Jazz with certain colors. I think if you talk to any NBA fan out there and you ask them what colors do the Jazz use, not right now, but what colors they associate with the Jazz, I bet a lot of people would bring up purple. So to me, I think it just created more of an identity crisis, and we talked about this before, where I feel like when I'm on Twitter and I'm seeing people commenting on Jazz posts or things like that, I'm seeing a lot of other NBA fans being very confused at what the Jazz are doing too. So yeah, as far as identity crisis, I still think we're in one. And I think it's cool that Sam, you talked about this, that Ryan kind of used this as his own project and wants to put a stamp on the team, and I think that's absolutely great. I just wish that there would have been a little more raising of hands maybe in that room at the time to say, well, maybe this isn't the way we should go. It sounds to me like it was, like you were saying, a little bit more like, yeah, it's great. Like, yeah, let's affirm this decision. But, yeah, I think it could have gone a lot better. And I think you mentioned this, Adam, with Ryan saying in the press conference, right, that there were some things that he didn't like. And that was kind of shocking to me in a way, because I thought, if you're the owner of a team and you really want to be involved, that if there are things that you don't like about not just a rebrand, there's certain things you don't like about the arena, there's certain things that you don't like about, a whole sphere of things, that you'd want people to know that you're not feeling it. So that was kind of shocking to me, to be honest.
Yeah, that was surprising as well. Ultimately, I think I lean more towards, hey, this was a bad process, and there were some bad practices. In that, I think they came with an intent. They did their due diligence, the focus groups, the consultants, or whatever. And I think that they had this vision, but a lot of it was just, hey, we're moving forward. And so we want your support, I say this, I've kind of observed this a little bit throughout my career, that, sometimes, we use this term collaboration, right, to kind of, get everybody's ideas and stuff. But I've kind of observed that at some point people say, okay, you know what, we're done collaborating, just get on board, back the plan because we're moving forward. And I kind of feel like that's what it was. And in a way, I think what Ryan's talking about with, some of the things that he didn't like, in a way, I think he, shared a vision of wanting to be different and all these things. And, the designers came with, all of this really bold stuff. And, they convinced him of, why it achieved his vision. He was like, yeah, I'm on board. But then when, the fan base isn't reacting anywhere close, he's like, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I had in mind the whole time anyways. So that's why I kind of feel like there wasn't good practice and it wasn't a good process because, it seemed like there was so much confidence all the way till the very end. And at the slightest, hint of pushback, they're starting to reassess. And then when, the floodgates open up and people are really disappointed with how things are shaking out, they started investing, a lot of time, money, etc., to repitch the idea and kind of, almost back PR the whole thing. So I would, it's totally fine that if Ryan wants to make this his pet project and it's like his version of the Jazz and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he owns the team, it's absolutely fine. But from my perspective, I wouldn't call it good practice, especially as you mentioned, coming from somebody who, founded a business about, gathering data and keeping a pulse on what your market or your company, etc., feels about a certain subject. So those are kind of my thoughts about good practice, good process, and such. Did I spur any additional thoughts you guys would like to weigh in on? I see Sam shaking his head, or nodding his head.
Well, I think, you got to give Ryan a lot of credit because he's been more involved with, the fans and engaging the community than we probably saw ever from the Millers. And not to slight the Millers, they did a lot of amazing things too. But I just think that, we're finding that, Ryan, he's just a fan like us, and he might have preferences of things that he likes and directions that he wants to go. It may not align with the fans, but that's okay. It's his team, like you said. He has that ability, and I don't want to discredit his passion and his desire to be different and to be new because he wants to take us to the new heights. And are those new heights winning a championship? Hopefully. That's what I think most fans want to see. But we also want to see continuity. We want to see that there's a brand that we can identify with because we've been part of it for so long. And going to Tiffanee's thought on the Bulls, the Lakers, the Celtics, there's the consistency there. And there just hasn't been that with the Jazz. And so I think it's just watered down the brand so much that starting from scratch every 5 to 10 years is really difficult to do. And so he's up against a lot. I mean, he kind of inherited this. He inherited a lot of colors too. And so I can't think of any other professional sports franchise that's changed colors as much as the Utah Jazz. And I don't know if you guys can correct me on this, but the only other team that I've seen that's done this much is the San Diego Padres. And they've never won either. And so maybe it's something where the teams are trying to spur interaction. They're trying to grow their fans. And the only way they can do that, because they're not winning, is by changing things up aesthetically, if that makes sense. So that's my last kind of thought on the subject.
So what's the legacy of this era in a way? Like, how does this branding end up, being compared to, the navy and white or the Mardi Gras colors, right? Or the mountain jerseys, or even, the Southern Utah, gradient. And will the Jazz ever achieve a consistent, recognizable identity? Like clearly that's one of their objectives, but it's been complicated further and an optimist would say you kind of have to take a step back to go forward in a way. But, how does this all shake out in 5 years? How are we looking back on this era relative to others, and can we achieve an identity?
I don't know that any of us can even answer that question, right? It's kind of a wait and see process. It's a good, it's a good question to ask. I just don't know. A lot of things could happen in the next 5 years, right? Could this be seen as like the worst rebrand ever? Possibly. Who knows, right? Maybe 5 years from now, and I'm saying that in jazz terms, not necessarily in all of sports, but you know, who knows? In 5 years, do things change again? I don't know. You know, are we to a point now where we have rebranded so many times that like enough is enough, and we just decide, hey, we're sticking with black, white, and yellow. Like these are our colors going forward. We can't afford, you know, we can't afford another rebrand down the line. Don't know. Can the Jazz ever achieve a consistent identity? That's a great question. I don't think I have an answer for that one. I think it's a wait and see. I don't know. I think obviously the fan opinion has been heavy enough that I don't think that they'll just brush off, you know, and I don't think they are currently, and I don't think they will going forward, brush off any of the fan opinions, especially if, as we've mentioned, especially if merchandise sales, jersey, you know, sales aren't where they need to be. I think the dollar in that department might, I mean, you know, it could have something to do with it. I guess my answer to all those questions is I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's definitely fair because, you know, we have seen so many changes, and so we're not used to the consistency at this point. We've seen every 5 to 10 years we've seen a rebrand, and so to answer your question is, how does this rebrand compare to some of the others? I don't know. I like to put it maybe in baseball terms. I mean, you look at the Utah Jazz as a whole. They've hit a couple home runs. I think they did a really great job with the original purple with the Jazz, you know, J-Note AZZ and the color scheme. Iconic, right? We've seen those come back a couple years ago. Even the whites in that, you know, the home whites were amazing back then. And then we saw them rebrand to the Purple Mountains. I think that was probably another home run as it pertains to how uniforms were in the 90s. And then they've had some strikeouts. You know, I think I wasn't a huge fan of the navy blue, light blue Darren Williams AK-47 era. Although I love that era, I thought there were some fun teams. I didn't ever feel like those uniforms spoke to me. They got rid of some really great ones, you know, and replaced them with those. So it's hard to follow up the Jazz Mountain design. And so I think this design that they've just recently come out with might be at the bottom of the totem pole, unfortunately. But I'll put a caveat onto that because everything can change if a team is winning. Okay, if the team somehow, whether this year with the core group that they have, they go and win, you know, make a deep run into the playoffs, and who knows if they tank and they get Victor Wembanyama or some young star, and that's our new identity is this superstar, and we can build on, you know, that type of player, and they win a championship in the next 5 years. Hey, I could see the team leaning into that and saying, hey, we're going to keep this. I don't think you've ever seen a team rebrand after winning a title. And one last thing on this, I think that we have to keep in mind that Nike has its parameters on how many times and how often a team can rebrand. I mean, it's for the association white jerseys and then the color icon jersey, whatever that may be. That's a 5-year commitment. And so you can't just go and change. Could the team pull some strings and maybe change after 2 or 3 years with this current set? It's up for debate. I think that they probably could, but Nike is years in advance with their uniforms. And so to that point, you know, we might be, you know, in on this uniform rebrand for 5 years at the minimum. We'll see what happens in the next 5 years. I think there's a lot of question marks, just like Tiffanee said. So will they ever achieve a consistent identity? I don't know. I think that every time you go and rebrand again and add new colors to the palette, you look up in your stands and you see Skittles, an array of colors in the Vivint Arena during a game, whether it's purple, it's yellow, it's white, black, it's everything. And so maybe that's our brand. I don't know. It's a lot of question marks going forward, and it's going to take winning and it's going to take consistency, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear you. As far as legacy goes, I kind of feel like this kicks off the modern era of Jazz basketball in a way. That because, in a 2-year window, you coincided moving on from the two cornerstones, Gobert and Mitchell, simultaneously changing ownership and did this big of a rebrand. And the league is set to explode, not only in terms of wealth, but potentially expanding into, more international markets. A lot of expansion talk about Mexico City. Like, this feels like this is kind of the tipping point of modern Jazz basketball is what we're entering in a way. And I think that's probably how it's going to be looked back upon as kind of that ushering in of this, more modern era of the team. As far as achieving a consistent, recognizable identity, if the Jazz had made a move to purple, I actually do think that they do achieve it, because we're kind of at this point where we're beginning to lose either, just due to time, or disinterest, starting to lose, most of those generations that were inherent to the purple. And we're starting to, have a lot of fans who have only grown up with these 5 to 10 year rebrands, every single time. So I felt like this was a pivotal point where if you did introduce purple, you actually probably do solve the identity crisis, and not just internally, but from a league or just casual fan perspective. Purple is now associated with the Utah Jazz. I think they could have achieved that. Now, I'm really skeptical that from a casual fan or a non-basketball fan that a color would ever really be associated with this team, or a suite of colors would ever be associated with this team. I think the thing we have going for us is the J note, and that's really what we can hang our hat on as the consistent, identifiable component of Jazz basketball. So how would you guys see it evolve? Maybe take just a minute or something and say, if Nike were to allow the Jazz to pivot, slightly, we have to keep a 90% facsimile of what we currently have, but, they allow for some subtle tweaks, not with colors, but, with some implementation, some design aspects of jerseys or whatever. What are you doing? What are you changing? Sam, start with you, man.
Yeah, and I've talked about this quite a bit on my own Twitter, but I think, like I mentioned before, adding some trim to these, the collars and the sleeves of the uniforms would be a big step forward. My next tweak, and if you can call this minor, I don't know, but sizing down that font, and you don't even have to change the font all the way if you don't want to, but if you're not ready to make that big of a change, but size it down. Let's get some more thought out design elements into this uniform that ties it into Utah, that ties it into Jazz, and ties it into our identity. You have to make the fans connect with it. And if it's a practice uniform, they're not going to connect with it at all. So those would be my minor changes that I would make to try and solve the issue at hand.
Tiffanee, anything different to that's burning for you that you make some subtle tweaks for?
I think Sam pretty much covered it. I don't think there's more that I can add to what he said. I definitely agree that sizing down the font would probably be a good option there. Adding some type of personality. I don't know what that is. I'll leave that to designers to do, but something recognizable within the jersey, something that says it's a Utah Jazz jersey without just saying Utah or Jazz. I think that's why a lot of people resonated with the mountain jerseys and even like the gradient, city jerseys that we've had, right? Because there was a Utah element, included within the design. You got mountains, that's a Utah thing. You've got the gradient was very southern Utah with the sunset. You had the lines going down the sides,
Yeah.
I just think that there was a lot of personality with some former jerseys that just haven't been included in the rebrand. So anything that can add a little character to your point, Adam, I think would be a win at this point.
So fast forward 5 years, Nike says, okay, Jazz, you can rebrand. Tiffanee, what direction do you go? What would you prefer to do at that juncture? And obviously you have to, think with the limited, exposure that you have to all the Jazz history at this moment, and not in 5 years, but at this point, what direction would you go?
Well, hey, if the Jazz do win a championship in the next 5 years, I will be full on board with the black, white, and yellow. So, like to Sam's point, teams don't change, teams don't rebrand after winning a championship. So, if somehow that happens in the next 5 years, yeah, I'll be on board. But I mean, we've talked about it. I would love a return to purple. I would. I think purple would sell. You made this point, Adam, that I think purple is identifiable with the Jazz. I think if that happens, when that happens in the future, I think a lot of Jazz fans will sort of breathe a sigh of relief and say, guys, we're back. Like, we got back to our roots. It's finally happened. We're not trying all these other colors out again. I think that's my ideal. I don't know if that's something happen.
Yeah.
We've talked about, are they ever going to achieve a consistent identity? Who knows? But that would be my vote in 5 years if it, they come to the point where they have to make a decision on what to do. I think purple is the way to go, and I'll always be a purple fan for sure. Yeah, that's what I would lean towards.
What about you, Sam?
For me, I think that I probably align with Tiffanee quite a bit here. I think that, like you mentioned earlier, Adam, I think they could have solved a lot of the problems if they would have just returned to purple. And, they could have even tweaked the design, upgraded the note. Obviously, they took off the AZZ. We're not going to see that anymore, which I thought that was a really good word mark on the jersey and kind of an iconic design. They didn't think so. That's fine if they want to remove that, but they kept the note, which is a huge symbol. And I'm glad that we have that going forward, because that's really all we have, like you said. And so for me, if it's 5 years down the road and I get the chance to rebrand, I mean, I'm going to try to do a modern take on a purple uniform. And if you follow the team closely, in that same rebrand video, they even showed what the next two uniforms are in next year, and which is unheard of for teams to do. I mean, we've already released our city edition for next year, which is in a purple with kind of a gradient mountain look. And so going back to that gradient design and gradient idea, which was new to the league at that time, the Jazz were the only team that has done that. Now the Phoenix Suns have done it, and other teams as well. I'd probably lean back into that. Go purple gradients. And if you're not a fan of just kind of a very deep purple, like the mountain purple, if you want to wear like more of a lavender, that looks good on a hoodie. And you could go that direction with the merch and things like that if you don't feel like that mountain purple is kind of your style. So I would definitely try and get back to those roots. What your secondary and tertiary colors are, that's up for debate. I think you'll have half Jazz fans say, let's go original Mardi Gras colors with purple, green, and gold. And then you'll have a lot of fans that are more of the fans of the 90s colors, where it's, let's do the kind of the more mountain purple with the kind of a teal blue, maybe some copper in there. But man, we have a lot of options, don't we? We have a lot of directions that we could go. It's going to be pretty fascinating to see the direction that the team goes. But, I'm excited nonetheless.
So I guess maybe I'll share my opinion. Had the Jazz kind of done this right, had they done more good practice with this whole thing, and even still chosen black, white, and yellow, because I really have come around on them. I love the colors. If they had gone about it the right way, I think, and really leaned into Jazz and creating this vibe and this, I don't know, this character about, these jazz clubs, and, educating, the fan base more on, black jazz music and things, really leaned into that and had a lot of branding elements, like we saw that cool take note in the practice facility. I thought there was just so much potential with that kind of stuff. Maybe not explicitly for jerseys, but just throughout the arena and in marketing materials, etc. I felt like if they really had leaned into that, and frankly, honestly, it just boggles my mind that they buried the lead of the symbolism of the colors, hearkening back to jazz, why they didn't blast that from every medium they had. I have no clue. Had they done that right, I'd probably be tempted to stick with what we have, because of what I mentioned, ushering in this modern era, and I probably would be leaning there. But as of right now, I'd lean toward the purple, because all of this stuff that we mentioned with the merchandising, you still could have done it with purple. Like, just because black and white isn't part of your official palette with Nike on your jerseys, what does that matter? You have full authority over your merchandising, and a ton of black, white, and purple stuff would have just been massive home runs. So that's kind of where I sit on the what I'd do in 5 years.
Yeah, and if you kind of sparked a thought that I had as you were talking, because like you said, they kind of buried this idea of leaning into jazz music and the black key and a white key and spotlight yellow. And it kind of brings up an interesting dilemma that I think the Jazz organization has to deal with. And it stems back from when the team came to Utah originally. They didn't have enough time to rebrand the team when they came from New Orleans, so they stuck with jazz. And from then on, they've always kind of had this fish out of water element happening here, where there is no jazz in Utah. We're mountains. And so right now, I think we have two very popular eras here that we're trying to merge together, and it's a really difficult thing to do. And as somebody like me who's tried to design uniforms, and I want to get, I want fans to be excited. When I put out a design, I want fans to like it, obviously. And so I think the team's in that same boat. They have this mountain identity and they have this jazz music identity. Merging the two is nearly impossible, in my opinion. And so I think you have to lean into one or the other. And so either way, whatever you do, you're going to affect and maybe kind of push away some fans, whether they like one, era or another. But I think you have to do it. I think it's the only way that you can really save the semblance of what branding you still have available to you. Yeah. And luckily both identities, whether it's the New Orleans Jazz Mardi Gras colors or the Utah Jazz mountain colors, luckily they both have purple. So I think we can at least align with that. We've got the Utah Jazz note. I think we could take those two things and run with it and have a pretty successful brand going forward.
Okay, to wrap up, give me 30 seconds on how you're feeling about the Jazz right now. Let's get to actual basketball talk. Tiffanee, 30 seconds on, how you're feeling about this Jazz team right now.
Yeah, I admit, I was expecting when the season started, I was not expecting a winning team. I've been very impressed with this start. Now they are on a 3-game skid. So I'm very curious to see how they bounce back from this. But I mean, being the first team in the Western Conference to 10 wins, I think was huge. I've seen a lot of grit. I've seen a lot of effort. I've seen a lot of things that I feel like we weren't necessarily seeing in the last year or two. So I've been very impressed. I've been watching pretty much every game that I'm able to. I'm excited about the team. That's where I'm at right now. We'll see how things go. I think, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of things could still change with this team this season in particular. But as of right now, I'm having fun, and I'm having more fun than I thought I would. If you had told me that the Jazz record would be what it is now at the beginning of the season, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So right now, I'm just having fun, and I think that's what a lot of fans are doing. There's not a lot of expectation on the team. Now, maybe that's changed because of how much they've won. I wonder if some people's expectations have changed a little bit, where now they're expecting more wins maybe than they did. but I think overall expectations are minimal, and people are just having fun. And I think that's the best thing to expect out of this year is just, let's see a gritty team. Let's see a team that dives on the floor for loose balls. Let's see teams that play some defense. So I'm having fun. That was way over 30 seconds, but that's my minute and a half or whatever.
Love it.
I think Tiffanee made some great points. We haven't seen a team with this kind of grit, in a few years. And so a team that is playing with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, if I were involved in a team that everyone told me we were going to only win less than 10 games, of course we'd want to band together and try to, beat the critics. And even if the critics were within our own state. So I'm loving seeing that. I'm loving Coach Hardy. I think he's doing a fantastic job with this young group. And it's kind of a band of misfits that have just they found some success early. Now, I do think that teams are starting to figure them out a little bit. The tape is out there on the Jazz and how you can beat them. But, man, great start of the season. It's been a lot of fun so far. Jersey's withstanding. I enjoy a lot of the players, whether they be, we mentioned Walker Kessler, who's a lot of fun. Kelly Olynyk, who was a player I never really liked, but I've been enjoyable to watch. Obviously, some of our mainstays like Clarkson and Conley are still around, but fun group to watch, and they bring the energy, which is all you can ask for as a fan.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me to review the rebrand, put it all in the rearview mirror, and I'm so happy you guys came aboard, and we'll see how things shake out. But this was so awesome to do. Sam, you gave us so much awesome insight into a little bit of behind the scenes, and Tiffanee, you are the poster child for how the fan base has felt and struggled with this whole rebrand. So thank you both so much for coming on and telling us all about it.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.